All right, welcome back, everyone, for our final session of the summit. I would like folks just to take a seat, and we got a great conversation coming up for you here. Really exciting topic that I know has been one of the topics of most interest among our network over the last year or so, which is artificial intelligence. So really excited for this conversation, and we are focused certainly on both the challenges and the opportunities created by AI here at the New Deal Forum. And we heard yesterday about some of the most pressing concerns during our democracy panel. In the poll that Debbie unveiled yesterday morning, we asked people actually how familiar they are with how political campaigns are using AI. And for people who have heard about it, you can see some of their responses. They weren't all negative, but definitely included a lot of concerns about fake audio and video and disinformation. However, only 41% of people said they were very or somewhat familiar. So that's 60% who said they were not, kind of underscoring the need for over-communication, as we talked about yesterday, with the public before and after issues arise with AI. So for more on this, we hope you'll check out our recent guide that is on our website for dealing with the impact of AI on elections. That includes recommendations building on the conversation from yesterday about shaping legislation that is still moving through a lot of state houses, as well as non-legislative steps that can be taken, like launching public information campaigns and preparing for rapid response. So with that, we want to turn our attention on AI because we don't believe that developments in AI are all or primarily bad news. So to today, where we want to focus on our other main priority in this space, which is using AI to make government work better. This was a key issue that came out of our conference for those of you who were with us in Washington, D.C. last fall. And it will be one of the key issues to be explored by our soon-to-be-launched AI task force. So we've got a great group to discuss this today. I want to welcome Ahmad Thomas, CEO of the Silicon Valley Leadership Group, which is one of the nation's most dynamic business associations representing the global technology companies that are driving the innovation economy. He's also a former senior congressional aide, and he's joined by Stephen Keynes, Chief Innovation Officer for the city of San Jose and a senior advisor to New Deal leader Mayor Matt Mahan, along with Colleen Schwab, who's a global digital innovation leader at Amazon Web Services, who is based at the Arizona State University AI Cloud Innovation Center. So welcome Ahmad, Stephen, and Colleen, and looking forward to the conversation.
Well, thank you very much, Jonathan. Honored to be here and honored to be on a panel with such an esteemed group of experts. So I thought what we would do here, I can give a brief intro because I want to make sure we hear from you all and leave time for the audience to engage. And please, let's make this as engaging a panel as we can. I know we're wrapping up what's been a very good couple of days for all of you here. So where you have questions, we want to make sure to hear from you and ensure that you are engaged in the conversation. I'll give an intro, talk about how Silicon Valley Leadership Group is connected to AI. Then maybe Colleen will turn to you first, and then to Stephen to hear from you, and then audience questions. A little bit about me, Silicon Valley Leadership Group first. What we're doing around AI and some of the opportunities that I see connected to AI in this space. We are the business association of the tech employers in Silicon Valley, of all the large employers in Silicon Valley. We were founded in the late 70s by David Packard of HP. At the time, there were about 30 companies that got together to invest in the Valley, to create real bridges between the public and the private sector. A lot of, I think, visions of the Valley going places. And you fast forward today, as I said, virtually every major global technology brand that you all recognize as part of our business association. With AI, we have been very focused on the regulatory posture, in particular in California. So we created an institute, the Institute for California AI Policy, with the thinking that as California is often a first mover, we will likely set the regulatory posture that other states will follow. We also believe that if we do this well, we can set a posture that is positive to harness this technology in a responsible manner. And we believe that that type of regulatory posture can also be reflected by what we see coming out of DC. Core to our principles are deep engagement and communication and partnership between public sector leaders like yourselves and private sector leaders, those working closely with the technology, our companies. I think if you look at what's happened in Europe around AI and their regulatory posture, we would actually see that as not the approach that we would advocate towards. We are very supportive of what we've seen in California from our governor to date, which has been very proactive, positive communication between industry partners and between government to try and set the right guardrails in place. So that's a little bit about where we've been focused, and we'll get into this in more detail. To close my brief comments here at the top, when I think of opportunities connected to AI, there are two places or two segments when we talk about our economy that come to mind. I think of healthcare first and foremost, and I also, when I think about AI and opportunity, I'll point out one specific social impact example, which is connected to the unhoused population in LA. Our working group at SVLG, we have Google, but a strong partner in all of this work is Johnson & Johnson. I think the reason why healthcare has so much potential for good connected to AI is because with cancer detection, with technologies that can really save cost and save a lot of potential pain for patients, that technology can be harnessed in a very positive and productive manner. And I know you all are familiar with this at a high level. And in terms of social good at a city or municipal level, I'll close on the example from LA with the Policy Innovation Lab out of UCLA, where they are using data from social services to look at individuals who are at risk of becoming unhoused. And based off of that data and utilizing AI to synthesize that information, they're able to proactively get help to those who need it most and significantly reduced instances of individuals becoming homeless. And that's just one example of where I think this technology can be harnessed for such good. But that's a little bit of a background that I hope sets the table and doesn't take too much time. Colleen, I have your bio here, which I want to read, and then I'd love for you to share a little bit about what you are working on at ASU. So Colleen is a global digital innovation leader at Amazon Web Services. She's based at the Arizona State University Artificial Intelligence Cloud Innovation Center and works with organizations to solve mission or organizational related challenges with technology. She leverages her more than 2 decades of working in the public sector to inspire the art of the possible by using Amazon's approach to innovation, working backwards. Prior to this, she led marketing and strategy teams and most recently served as the Chief Performance Officer with the Greater Phoenix Economic Council. Thank you so much again for joining us today, Colleen.
Oh, my pleasure for being here. So I think, it's interesting when, in thinking about my opening remarks and just my introduction of myself, me working at Amazon wasn't part of my long-term plan originally, right? I spent a lot of years, 2 decades in fact, working in the nonprofit sector, working in economic development, working on missions that, but I always felt like I was also working on the tail end, addressing the symptoms, maybe not always the root cause. And in a quest to learn about how we progress and how we have digital maturity amongst economic development in state and local government and all of the entities that I intersected with, I saw an opportunity to dive deep and learn about how Amazon innovated it and went from a bookseller in 1994 to this multi-pronged business that it is today. And knowing that there's no compression algorithm for experience, meaning Amazon has had the pure pleasure of working with everything from solopreneurs to state and local governments, to federal entities, to nonprofits, you name it, we have worked with them. And so having all of that perspective and being able to then apply that to the work that I get to do at the AI Cloud Innovation Center was an opportunity that I couldn't pass up. Because now what I'm able to do and what the purpose of the AI Cloud Innovation Center is this is a strategic public-private partnership that we have with Arizona State University, where AWS saw the writing on the wall with the opportunity to leverage the power of our education ecosystem and have that backed by the power of AWS, where we're now utilizing students as hands to keyboard that are working on real mission-related problems that a government entity would come to the Cloud Innovation Center and they say, I have this problem and this pain point. I always say, fall in love with your problem and we will help you figure out that solution. And we're utilizing technology to help to address those pain points in new, modern, and creative ways so that we can support with the digital maturity journey of our state and local government, our nonprofits, our education institutions. So I know we're gonna dive in more about how things work, what are some of the topics that we have worked on specifically to help state and local government really accelerate innovation and create efficiencies amongst the teams. So I know we'll get into that in a little bit, but I'll pass the baton down the line to allow my other esteemed colleague to give an intro.
Yeah, thank you so much, Colleen. And let me make sure I read Stephen's bio. Now, Stephen's someone we know locally, both of us based in Silicon Valley. He's our CIO for City of San Jose. So he serves as Chief Innovation Officer for the City of San Jose and a Senior Advisor to Mayor Matt Mahan. He is a legal technologist, policymaker, academic, and attorney. Prior to working for San Jose, Stephen completed a 2-year residential fellowship at Codex, the Stanford Center for Legal Informatics, where he researched government and law enforcement use of facial recognition and surveillance. And he really is one of the best thinkers out there that we've worked with when it comes to finding those partnerships, as Colleen noted, between municipal leadership, technology, and positive social impact. Would love to hear your welcome remarks, Stephen, and it's wonderful to see you here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for those kind words, Ahmad. And very nice to be here with you all today. This is my first New Deal Forum event, and I am so excited with just the amount of new ideas, conversations, and just inspiration I've heard from all of you. So thank you all for being here. My name is Stephen Keynes. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer and Budget Director for the City of San Jose. I've been with the city for about 3 years, and I really was drawn to civil service after my time in academia because I wanted to kind of put my ideas into practice. I really wanted to understand under real world conditions how strong were my academic credentials, and I've definitely had a great time ever since and had the pleasure of serving not only under Mayor Matt Mahan and also Mayor Liccardo before him. Before I dive into some of the ways that San Jose thinks about AI and identifies which types of problems are appropriate, I'd love to just paint a quick picture for you, especially for those who haven't had the chance to come visit us. So San Jose is just under 1 million people. We were formerly the 10th largest city, now the 12th. Specifically, we are a very diverse city. In 57% of the homes in San Jose, a language other than English is the primary language spoken around the dinner table. We also have the largest population of overseas Vietnamese people as well. We also have the rich workers' legacy rights of Cesar Chavez. And we're also the home to many major companies such as Zoom, Adobe, and Cisco. And in the San Jose metro area, we also have another powerhouse, NVIDIA, who just had their GTC conference in San Jose. And so as we think about what are the right topics and issues for AI to address, one of the first things that comes to mind are what are far-reaching issues that come across multiple lines of service delivery. So for us, that one of those would be AI translation, given that we have such a diverse community. So making sure that we're able to translate materials readily and accurately into English, Spanish, and then also Vietnamese is very important. And so one of my first pieces of advice to you all is that, it used to just be build or buy were the only two options for a lot of civic organizations and institutions. But now I think that with the advent of AI, you can also not only only take things off the rack and combine your own unique training data. So in the context of AI translation, we've used Google's base AI translation model, combined it with years of Vietnamese translation data that we have generated from our own city employees, as well as the conversations that we've had with our community as well. And now our algorithm actually performs better than the base algorithm when it comes to Vietnamese. And so that's one example of a far-reaching issue that covers a lot of our service delivery. And another thing that the mayor is particularly very focused on is just increasing productivity. In government, that is one of the regions where we haven't seen as much benefits and gains as productivity in the last few years, and we really want to reverse that. And so because we created such a great culture of openness, transparency, and the civic sandbox, which is something I'll get to a little bit later, we've really been able to encourage employees to responsibly test this technology in various ways. And so in certain circumstances, we've been able to allow city employees to utilize AI, specifically in the procurement realm, to help decrease the amount of time it takes to draft RFPs, which I'm sure for all of you, procurement is a bane of your existence as well. So it's always great to see gains in that area as well. I'll go over a few other use cases a little bit later, but I'll turn it over to Ahmad.
Yeah, no, thank you, Stephen. And Colleen, maybe the first question, AI, sometimes we don't even know where to start when we explain it, when we talk about use cases, when we talk about opportunities. My question would be twofold. One is, what advice do you have for our municipal leaders on where to start? But connected to that, how is your work, or what are you working on that you think would be of most interest and benefit to our leaders in the room?
Yeah, so thinking about what would be a benefit is to think about, a lot of times when I'm having conversations with community leaders and they're talking about AI, a lot of times they come into the room thinking that it is a complete overhaul of the team, overhaul of the mechanisms and the technologies. It's a complete overhaul. And where I almost like to pump the brakes a little bit is to say it's not. We have our technology ecosystems that exist, and sometimes there's an opportunity just to plug in an AI element into those ecosystems that enable something to work better, faster, stronger, create more efficiencies. And so when I think about it from that perspective, sometimes we see all these headlines all over about artificial intelligence, and we see that, there's lots of company names that you're seeing in them, and we often think, okay, I need to just go do that one thing that I read in that article, or I'm doing this one aspect of AI and I've nailed it, I am using AI. And what I'll also say is there's a big ecosystem. And when I truly mean when I say fall in love with the problem and enable the relationships that you could have with a place like Amazon or Amazon Web Services, your education community, your startup ecosystem. Enable those relationships that you have to help you flourish in new and creative ways with the use of AI. And then, I guess think of it from a small baby step, not always a massive overhaul. Because that's how you're able to start to see wins. You're able to start to see these efficiencies come amongst your staff. And then that broader impact of how you're ultimately utilizing tax dollars in a much more efficient way, because people are operating at a higher level and they're functioning more efficiently.
Yeah, I think that's so well said, in particular falling in love with the problem. And for me, sometimes I'll tell folks just to play with ChatGPT, for folks who have no familiarity with AI whatsoever. And looking at what that generative AI can do, I think it helps people understand that this can be a very, very positive tool if harnessed in the right manner. And Stephen, maybe for you as a follow-up, would love your guidance for our leaders about where, or maybe it's specific to the city of San Jose, where you all started and what guidance you have as municipal leaders approach the question of how to utilize AI effectively.
Absolutely. And before I get to the area of how we all started on this journey in terms of AI, I really appreciated what you just said, Colleen, about kind of starting slow. And one example of that comes to mind is our DOT is currently doing a pilot with the VTA in our city, specifically around traffic signal prioritization. And so we started in 2022 with just 2 bus lanes that run north to south in our city. And we've been able to essentially utilize AI in a cloud-based manner to alter the traffic signals to reduce red light delay for city transit. And the idea here is simply how can we reduce friction for residents to be able to make pro-social decisions? So encouraging public transportation through reducing resident wait time is one of those avenues. And so we saw some success in 2022. We expanded that to 13 additional intersections in 2023. And actually today at City Council, the council will vote as to whether to approve a contract for an even larger deployment because we found success there. And so I think starting in an area where, to Colleen's point, you're not ripping everything out and things that you can roll back if the results show otherwise is a very key point here. And so doing things that you can undo, I think, is a key point when you're piloting a lot of these technologies. But to answer Ahmad's question about how did we start here, I would believe that our AI journey really started around 2020 when we developed our first privacy principles with the help of Harvard Kennedy School fellows. And from there, we developed our privacy policy. We then hired a digital privacy officer, which I was very happy to serve on the hiring panel for that, as well as our data equity lead and a chief data officer as well. And so over time, we've really just been building this internal capacity to answer these really difficult questions. And so it's been really great to not only have great ideas come directly from our IT department, but some of the best conversations I have all week is when our public library or other departments will come forward and say, hey, I have this really great idea. Can you help me think through this and game plan what an implementation strategy would look like? And so I think one of the indicators, once you've kind of lit the creative and kind of intellectual fire, if you will, with your staff members, is when the ideas are not just a one-way street and you actually get some return back in terms of people doing their own research, to Ahmad's point, and coming up with innovative solutions. And so laying the groundwork for privacy policy to understand that even in technology outside of AI, to make sure that we're responsibly doing this, I think was one of our first steps to allow us to move forward with confidence and really enjoy the success that we've been facing today.
Yeah, and Stephen, maybe it's worth taking a step back, cognizant of us being in Arizona, a different climate, literally, figuratively. Paint the picture about San Jose as a community. You know, I think that'd be helpful. You began that in your intro, but for folks to understand, I think one of the interesting conversations that I often have is as people get a sense of the diversity in the city of San Jose. Silicon Valley, of course, is our broader geography. It's our innovation ecosystem, but would love for you to speak a little bit more to San Jose and your challenges, which I think will be helpful in tying this all together.
Absolutely. And so I mentioned some of the statistics around percentage of foreign-born speakers in the U.S., but also we have 60,000 small businesses, and 50% of those are actually led by foreign-born entrepreneurs. And so immigration and diversity is at really the heart of our city. It's something that we're immensely proud of specifically. And we've had a lot of history specifically also in not only software, but also hardware as well. Also a study in 2014 revealed that we were one of the best cities for economic mobility, being measured as children growing up in the lower economic rungs being able to elevate to the highest as well. And so that's been really great to kind of see and foster. Another major asset that we have is San Jose State University, which is the oldest public university on the West Coast and graduates more technical grads than the Ivy Leagues combined by pure number, which is great to see. And so that's been a great access. And in terms of just access to education, it's really highlighted to me, coming from the East Coast, the importance of public universities and the role that they have in increasing this economic mobility and opening up experiences for other people. But, you know, no city is perfect, and some of the challenges that we're facing in San Jose is continuing escalated housing costs. And so that is something that we've been trying to solve, not only with increased affordable housing, but also in the case of homelessness. We have between 5,000 to 6,000 unsheltered residents who are living in unmanaged conditions. And so this has had us to really invest in emergency interim shelters through these prefabricated tiny homes that we've been deploying in various neighborhoods throughout the city, which has been great in terms of the fact that we've seen great transition out of interim housing into other areas. And then we have constant wait lists for these shelters. So it's great to see that there's high utilization there. One thing that we're currently dealing with that's a major forcing function and that I'm still wrestling with my colleagues as budget director is our regional clean water permit. We've applied for renewal 3 times and it has been rejected. And the reason is that we have not done enough about removing and migrating folks who are living by our waterways. We have a high amount of waterways in the city of San Jose, and a lot of our unsheltered populations are actually congregating near the waterways, which has been creating discharge into the waters. And during the pandemic, we were able to receive cleanup credits. Sorry, a little bit hard with the alliteration. But we need to essentially develop a new strategy.
Cleanup credits. Boy, okay.
Exactly. But we need to essentially find a way to either migrate these folks into a managed condition within 500 feet of the waterway or migrate them away from waterways entirely. And similarly, we also have an issue with RVs as well and the environmental implications that come with that. And so figuring out how to actually migrate 5,000 people into these managed conditions is something that we're wrestling with at the moment, and looking at things like San Diego. They have safe sleeping sites, especially near their city hall, and in other areas specifically that we're trying to figure out how can we alleviate this issue, gain compliance with the Water Rights Act, and also create dignified living spaces for these folks experiencing hard times as well. And so it's really creating a forcing function, and it's a tough puzzle to solve, but something that we're eager to get into.
Yeah, not easy at all, but appreciate the effort and the leadership. And Colleen, I think what Stephen shared about San Jose State, it's a great segue to your work at ASU, and would love for you to share about the remarkable innovation that you are leading. And I think also beyond just your work with Arizona State, how that ties to the leaders in the room in terms of where you see opportunities to leverage AI.
Yeah, that's great. So happy to address that. So at Arizona State University, the strategic partnership that we have between ASU and AWS is an opportunity to democratize innovation. And what I mean by that is sometimes we see that big business are able to deploy these innovations at scale quickly. And sometimes in the public sector, what we're seeing is that there's a laggard effect there, where they're moving a little bit slower, where the digital maturity might not be as evolved. But where AWS and Amazon truly believe that if we invested in, we are able to help public sector move faster. And so what we are offering at the Cloud Innovation Center is, it doesn't matter about where you're located. I work with people from across the globe on all various missions, all various sizes of government. And what we do is we offer no-cost design thinking and prototyping at our center. We then take your real-world examples of those pain points that you have. Then we utilize the student workers that we have at the Cloud Innovation Center, who are the hands to keyboard, but they are mentored by our staff, so the innovation is just as if Amazon would create it ourselves. And we then utilize those students. We're educating them on, like I said, those real-world use cases. And now you're able to see a prototype of something that addresses your pain point. And then with the idea that if you're able to see a prototype, you're able to bring it back to your leadership, you're able to bring it back to your city council, your mayor, whatever that might be. Showcase how that technology can actually be utilized in your image and likeness to address your particular pain point. Then you're able to, embrace that technology a little bit more easily to be able to implement that into a production type workload in your own ecosystem. So it's not taking this massive overhaul approach, it's taking a rapid prototype by rapid prototype type example, so that then you can, like I said, see that. And this comes at no cost for our public sector all across the globe. And so, I welcome people to, come to us with your pain points and your problems. Come to us and let's talk about how we could address them with utilizing technology. But I'm also going to say that another thing that really is critical to being able to leverage the use of generative AI and the Cloud Innovation Center is data. And I think Stephen can probably also speak to the importance of data and data consolidation and having data available, especially in the cloud, to be able to maximize the use of generative AI. So if you're coming to me asking about wanting to apply AI to some of the pain points that you have, one of my quick follow fast questions is going to be, what kind of data do you have access to? And so so knowing that how your ecosystem operates with data, and even if you have those questions on data and you're like, I don't know, that is an area where we can help you too. I mean, don't worry about that piece of the puzzle. I encourage you to come to us, even if you don't know where your data lives. Like, let's talk through that, and I can help you with the right questions to ask your internal teams. But there is an opportunity to leverage technology, and like I said, taking those baby steps forward to be able to maximize operations, to improve resident services, you name it. We have worked on innovations to help address those pain points.
And how do the leaders, the executives in the room best engage with you?
So you can go to cic.asu.edu. You can find me on LinkedIn. I've got cards. I've got a couple great colleagues that are here in the room as well. And so we are here and at your disposal. Just, feel free to reach out anytime, and I will make sure to double back with you.
Yeah, thank you, Colleen. And not to get controversial here, but this is something that might be a philosophical question. This idea of our public sector, our municipalities, not moving fast, or certainly what I have experienced, although San Jose is unique, we do see our companies in the private sector moving at quite a, moving much faster around innovation than municipalities. Is that a culture challenge? Is that a resource challenge? Is it neither? I would love you all to opine around that.
So I think part of it is a little bit of leadership, and by no means am I calling anyone out, but I do think that, on some levels there's moving with a vision, and then there's moving with a vision confidently. And I think that a lot of different municipalities are at different stages of that. And so one thing that I've just been very fortunate with working with the city of San Jose is that, again, we've really assembled a superstar of people just in different departments that all have some familiarity with technology and the vision to actually make things better with really intentional, responsible use of technology at the forefront. And so to give you an example of how this would play out, we have a 311 service, like many of you throughout in your jurisdictions, which are useful for reporting anything from potholes to fireworks to road obstructions and things like that. Like many of you, we get thousands of reports each year, and it's often very difficult to keep up with the demand. Our current information technology officer is Khalid Tawfiq, and he had this vision where essentially instead of relying on residents to report, what if we could find an automated way to detect issues before they happen and then essentially alleviate the resident from the responsibility of having to report these issues manually. And what that looks like in practice is he's deployed a pilot program specifically where we attach cameras to city fleet vehicles and which drive every mile of San Jose. And right now we're testing only in one district on a parking enforcement vehicle. But with 4 vendors at once, we're able to essentially, once we redact faces, license plates, and other personal identifiable information from the video, share that information, those video feeds, with 4 different vendors to be able to try to identify potholes and other road obstructions specifically. And so with that, I think that it's a great example, but it really speaks to me how without that leadership, that vision, and also that confidence, we wouldn't be able to move forward and really kind of celebrate these achievements specifically. And so I'm really just honored again just to work at the city of San Jose and just really be able to advance great thought leadership. And as one additional point, we have this notion of the civic sandbox, which the mayor of San Jose often defines as specifically just having fast iterative cycles with joint venture specifically with private and public players to specifically solve some of our hardest issues. And so often, as we all know, procurement can be very difficult to stand up novel projects, but when you have many willing partners and folks like Amazon who are willing to engage in so many conversations before the contract is signed, it's really great to be able to kind of borrow from their institutional knowledge and really be able to incorporate these in solving some of our most difficult issues.
Who sets that vision? Is it the mayor or is it the department heads? Do you all kind of go to first principles with mission and vision when you have new city leadership? Where does that come from?
It's honestly a mix because, as you can imagine, IT directors are not replaced on the same time schedule as mayors and elected officials. And frankly, there's often some carryover. Another great former IT leader we had, Rob Lloyd, who was an amazing visionary, and he's just been elevated to assistant city manager, I believe. So he essentially is still in the organization, but runs other lines of service. So there is definitely a lot of push from elected officials, which can often grant the authority, but also they act as a magnet to attract other great partnerships. And so while our IT department does great work, I'm often the most visible kind of portion of our innovation infrastructure specifically. And so I often act as a filter for specifically what opportunities may come to the city. And if it's worthwhile, I'll easily connect you to our, let's say, head of public works for that kind of investigation, that type of continued processing. So it definitely is a myriad of people. I don't think it's any single one, but having the elected officials that have the faith in the staff members and giving them that leeway to figure out problems and really even pitch them ideas what they're looking for, I think is the biggest thing.
And yeah, thank you, Stephen. And Colleen, would love your perspective. Perhaps there's a leader in the audience who's dealing with a situation where things aren't moving fast enough when it comes to adopting new technologies, when it comes to innovation. Would love your perspective again around that. I think it is primarily often a cultural set of hurdles that have to be overcome. But what do you think?
So culture at Amazon it reigns supreme. In fact, I go around the country, and I am a Amazonian that is certified as a culture of innovation speaker, where I talk to universities, I talk to state and local government about building that culture of innovation and learning from how Amazon went from that bookseller in '94 to the multi-pronged business that it is today. That wasn't by chance. And so I agree. I think that culture is a really key component of that, and how you continue to encourage staff to be innovative, to not just have a pain point and let it just irk you and sit in that, in that junk with it, but how do you come up with a solution against it? And so one of the examples that I could give, about a pain point that, say, an attorney's office, a county attorney's office, right? They have, especially in Arizona, if you think about it, Maricopa County is large. And lots of jurisdictions from the various police departments are sending in police reports. And they're coming in, similar information on each report, but different formats. It's also coming in different mechanisms. Some are PDFs, some might be scanned in. It really ranges. And you can imagine that when those come in, they have to be processed. And that processing process is very manual in nature. But we can apply generative AI to that to be able to ingest that information into one system and be able to ask questions against those documents, alleviating so many pain points that those people within the attorney's office, that the lawyers, the attorneys, that they are having to do to process the paperwork. Now, that's just one example. And how did that come up? It came up because one representative in the IT department had said, hey, I think I could address this pain point, brought that to his leadership, and they said, that's a really interesting idea. That would save us hours upon hours of staff time if we were able to do what you're saying that AI could do. So he then reaches out to the Cloud Innovation Center, and he says, hey, I've got this idea. And so now, we're able to build that technology so that him and his leadership can see how this can actually be applied to save them hundreds upon hundreds of hours of time every year and then be able to process documents much more efficiently. With the end vision and goal also of, if they're able to ingest past documents of police reports, also apply predictive analytics against those to be able to assess crime trends and address them hopefully before they become a significant trend that's in the media headlines. Right? When you think of it from that perspective about the power of AI and the power of technology, it's not just about improving one side of the coin, it's about improving all of it. The community, the residents, enabling police officers in a more efficient way to address crimes. So it takes a think big moment, but knowing that you have to act maybe in a small way to get the ball going.
I love that. Think big and find ways to act in small ways to solve the problem. I want to ensure we're bringing members of the audience in for questions. And while you all formulate questions, I will ask one more follow-up because, Colleen, you said something might be tangentially related to this AI conversation, but I do have to follow up. How do you summarize that winning culture, answering the question of how Amazon went from a bookseller to what it is today?
So at Amazon, we've got kind of 4 different pillars when we talk about it. We talk about our leadership principles. We've got leadership principles that no matter where I am across the globe or what language somebody else speaks, if we say a set of words like, dive deep or think big, or we know the sub-definition of what all of those mean and exactly what our colleagues are saying. So finding about how you create leadership principles amongst your own teams. It's also about how you think about your technology infrastructure, thinking about it from a microservices lens, kind of like we've talked about. How do you create those small opportunities to win, but also enabling your team to try, fail fast, pull back without it costing a lot of money? That's the power of cloud, and why we find that so many municipalities, when they really lean into cloud, that they're able to move much faster in that capacity. We also look at how we construct our teams. When I work a lot with municipalities or with local coalitions, it's also about looking at how are you building the coalition of the necessary, not just the coalition of the willing. And so at Amazon, we call them 2 pizza teams, where teams don't exceed the size that could be fed with 2 pizzas. And because we see that 8 to 12 size team is optimal, where when you start to get much bigger, you lose communication breakdowns amongst the team. But it's also that team owns a problem, they build the problem, and then they continue to lead that problem and help to and address the solution, or build the solution, and then be able to own that going forward. So really looking at how do you create that coalition of the necessary in terms of building a tiger team. And at Amazon, we call those 2 pizza teams. And so those are just a few of the different things to be thinking about when it comes to building that culture. But I'm also going to say it starts at the top. We all know Jeff Bezos, Andy Jassy, right? That they drove a culture of innovation to inspire teams and inspire people to be builders, to enable a culture that ultimately, when you think about it, innovation and failure are 2 inseparable twins, that they go hand in hand. You can't, if you already know that something is going to be a success, well, it's not an invention, right? It's not an innovation because ultimately, you're not taking that risk far enough. And so kind of leading with some of those pieces is really important.
So powerful, and thank you, Colleen. I want to look around for questions. I see in the, I don't have glasses, so I can't see name tags, but in the green shirt, you're right in front of me.
This is fascinating. Thank you all so much. Oftentimes in government, we're very defensive about AI instead of leaning in and figuring out how we can utilize it. So using the example of the legal department and working with Amazon. So you come up with a solution for this local government. They implement it. Then do you monetize it? What happens then? Because obviously somebody else is going to benefit from that, it would seem.
It's a great question. And so at Amazon, we enable businesses to utilize our services that we have developed to support their scaling and infrastructure. And so certainly what we do at the Cloud Innovation Center is open source. And so the idea behind that is we're not taking any of your proprietary data or any of that type of stuff in our open source model. But the idea behind it is yes, that another entity across the globe could very much benefit from that, because the mental model of that innovation isn't just applied to the attorney's office. You can think about that from a transportation invoicing department or whatever that might be. And so one, we make that code and that solution open source. So technically speaking, any other entity could take that solution up and apply it into their ecosystem with some light tweaks and be able to utilize that same innovation. We also see opportunity where startups, I've worked with startups who say, wow, that's really cool. You've already addressed a customer pain point. Could I take that code and be able to create a solution off of it and then monetize it? Absolutely, that's fair game as well. And so our whole goal is to be able to, like I said, democratize innovation, but then do innovation on innovation. Not everything is a brand new bespoke build. And you can move much faster when you start to look at what has already been done, how can I tweak that to meet my needs? And that is the power of what we're able to do. So when we do this particular challenge that we're working on right now with the attorney's office, our next phone call is going to be for others that have that same exact pain point.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi there. My name's Colin. I'm on the City Council in La Mesa, California. Appreciate you guys being here. One of the things that one of the surprises I had as a local elected official is that I constantly get pitched like smart city stuff, like things to buy. I don't know if the legislators have the same experience, but I'm sure small city council members do. And so some of them are like make a lot of sense. Like I think Stephen, you mentioned like translation services. Like it's great investment. We should do that. But sometimes they're pitched us for something, and it's like where they're saying, listen, you've got a political problem, buy our technology, and you'll solve this political problem. But oftentimes they're gonna have to make the same political difficult challenges, or they replace one political challenge with another political challenge, right? And we have an example in the city of San Diego, which is adjacent to my jurisdiction, and where they bought a bunch of smart street lights that had like cameras, and one of the many promises on this was that it was going to help us identify where bikes were going, so we could make better infrastructure investments. But like fast forward 10 years from now, like it's still hard to build a bike lane. Like when we had information before, like where crashes and stuff were, and like it turns out like the reason we weren't building bike lanes is like the politics are hard, right? And there's like limited money and that sort of stuff. So the question for both of our panelists is for Stephen, like, how do you and your job like sift through the wheat from the chaff, right? Where technology investments would be useful as opposed to where they were just going to like kind of shift the problem around. And then Colleen too, for you, like in the work that you're doing, do you all think through when you get when someone comes to you with a pain point where you're like, listen guys, like this is not a technology problem, like you need to figure this out, like, so I'm just kind of curious to what extent that dynamic is at play in the work that both of you all do.
Absolutely, that's a great question. I would say there's often two categories of things that give me like the ick when I often see presentations. There's things that I think are frankly technically risky in terms that they may not be fully proven, and things that I would see as politically risky or have like some let's say implementation issue. And so to give you like an example of the latter, automated license plate readers, we currently have, I want to say around 220 deployed in the city, and we're going to implement more. A lot of this was funded with not only UASI grants, but then also the state of California granted millions of dollars to communities facing retail theft issues as well. And to be completely transparent, as a privacy professional, I was pretty adamantly against the technology when we first elected to move in that direction. And I spoke with the mayor. I kind of clearly outlined some of my issues about misidentification. I know that one of the Oakland privacy commissioners was actually stopped while driving a rented vehicle and was subject to a felony stop because the vehicle had been reported as stolen incorrectly, and so he and his brother had guns drawn on them. Very traumatic thing, and that has happened to a number of people as well. But after number one, doing a lot of community engagement, two, pushing our privacy office to develop a data use protocol, which clearly lays out retention and other kind of facets. Also speaking with our police department to institute policies that say, hey, don't act solely on a positive identification hit with the system. Also make sure you corroborate other things like the make, model, color of the vehicle as well before you kind of use that, and really making sure that everybody that touches the system has a clear understanding of the limitations. I felt more confident. And then also to clearly just constantly monitoring the situation, ensuring things that we have, things like Flock has a transparency portal for most cities that they've deployed this technology in, so you can kind of also go through and see with your own kind of assessment, if you think that it's still a value add from that perspective. And so things like that, I think frankly, not only de-risk, but give you a lot more confidence at night. The second thing that comes to mind is I think that academics often get a bad rep in innovation, but frankly, I think that they're almost like the historians of innovation in many ways, in that technology will constantly happen in cycles. And so I think that having people on your staff that have spent years really researching a subject and kind of see a lot of those trends can really help you avoid some of these issues. One also resource I want to present to you all is the City of San Jose has also created a government AI coalition that now has over 500 public agents and represents over 200 public agencies. And so one thing that we did in our phase one was actually release a set of deliverables that are meant to help correct that information asymmetry that we often face when we're being pitched technologies. And so we've created things like an AI vendor fact sheet, which will essentially request from vendors to identify how is the model trained, has there been a third-party audit associated with this. We've also released essentially AI policies that you as a city could choose to adopt or amend based on what you're looking for. We also have a vendor registry of companies who have proactively identified themselves as responsible users of technology. And we often just have regular convenings to be able to share information and really say, hey, what was your experience with this one vendor? What stage are you with them? What did you like? What didn't you like? And so I think also too, we often spend so much time focusing on our communities, and we should because, it's our residents' tax dollars, frankly, but frankly also dissolving the barriers between ourselves and convenings like this, and even just having a relationship with someone where even if you haven't talked in 8 months, picking up the phone and say, hey, I saw an article that you guys, had a contract with these folks last year. Where are you all now with it? I think is really important to just give you that peace of mind that you're moving in the right direction. So those are some of the things I look for when I'm trying to suss out whether an opportunity is right for the citizens of San Jose.
I'll also add, when I get pitched a lot of different ideas, right? Not all of them are the right fit for AI or Gen AI. And I'm gonna tell you that. We're going to have an honest conversation because not everything can be solved by this one technology, right? It's not going to enhance everything. And so we'll have that open and honest conversation. One mental model I will throw out to the crowd is that at Amazon, we lead with a customer obsession. And everything starts with the customer, and we work backwards from that. And so when we are looking to innovate, we're always listening to our customers. We're thinking about what their pain points are, what they're complaining about, what they're telling us, because even when they state that they're perfectly satisfied, they've always got ideas, right? Being a consumer yourself, you always got ideas about how something could be better. So we listen to all of that. But then a lot of people come and they'll say to me, well, if customers have a lot of ideas, how do you pick the right ones to innovate on behalf of? The mental model that the Amazon.com side uses, and I'm going to tell you this, even though it's not a perfect alignment to what you do, but I would encourage you to think of this from how could you apply the same mental model, is Amazon looks at it from durable needs: price, selection, and convenience. Nobody is ever going to tell Amazon.com, I wish that your price was actually more. I wish that your convenience of checkout process was more cumbersome. Or that I wish you had less selection on your platform. Customers are never going to say those things. So find out what and do maybe some brainstorming with you and your team or whatnot. What are your durable needs? How can you think about technology and innovation to apply that it has an impact in the right ways that you want it to have that impact, so that it's not just a flash in the pan, but actually creates a long-term impact?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. I want to see if we can get two additional questions in. And Stephen, on GovAI, which is incredible what you all are leading while we're looking for the next question, how can leaders get more information and engage with you around that?
Absolutely. So we have a sign-in page specifically on San Jose's website, and you can approach me afterwards if you'd like a QR code too as well, just to make it easy. But San Jose GovAI Coalition and Google will get you there. One other thing I just wanted to quickly add, Ahmad, going back to your LA model that you referenced in your opening remarks, one thing I think is really it's relatively simple, but I think it's impactful, is almost every AI model, if you just boil it down to a theory, like and test what are the basic assumptions, which in that situation, it's that there are certain predictive factors in people's economic profiles and also the way that they access services that will indicate whether they're on the cusp of homelessness. Even if you just take one simple strain of that, which is, let's say utility bills as an example. If someone falls behind on their utility bills, that's one of the first signs that they may be experiencing financial hardship. So if even at just a low-tech way that you wanted to utilize that pathway, but not go full bore in terms of doing AI as a full-scale deployment, you can even just send notices for available services with people who have late utility bills. And that alone, you're borrowing from the framework of what they're putting forward as a thesis, but you're not necessarily exposing yourself to all that technical leverage, right? And so I think sometimes deconstructing what are the assumptions for the underlying AI model or application can often even get you to a low-tech way that's cheaper and faster to implement with a lot less risk as well. And so that's something that I would also just also put forward as well.
Yeah, really well put, Stephen. I'll look for one last question out there. In the back.
Sean Connor from Lowe's. I always like to know who's on the forefront. We know San Jose is on the forefront. I'm sure my hometown of Oakland is on the forefront. Can you share 2 big cities and 2 small cities that are doing innovative work? And then can you share 2 companies that you're seeing that are in the mostly public sector space that are doing innovative work that we should be either watching out for in a positive way, not a scary way, or should be getting to know?
Absolutely. And so I guess LA has certain issues, but I think that things like their predictive model, should it prove successful, will really begin to start to address some issues that I think are very core to the city's issues. And so I think that if you also look at cities like Seattle and Boston, I've been very encouraged to see how they've been leaning into a lot of this data privacy and also just general generative AI regulations to ensure safe and ethical use of their technologies. I'm racking my brain right now for examples of smaller cities as well, so you might have to come back to me, unfortunately. But I know that Amazon has been a great partner for us in terms of supporting our work in IT in that angle. So I'll kick it over to Colleen.
Oh gosh, it's like trying to pick your favorite children, right? There's a lot of innovation happening that all across the globe that Amazon gets to have a lens into, and to call out a couple of them, I have to look for some key case studies on our particular website, but I would encourage you, honestly, if you go to the Amazon.com website or AWS.com website, is that there are so many case studies and examples of how institutions, how state and local government municipalities are applying technology to address some major pain points that they have had. And, they stand on stages for Amazon, for AWS, and we get really inspired by those types of stories. I know there's a handful of them that I'm working on right now that I just can't talk about quite yet, that aren't able to be publicly referenced. But know that AI there are so many people utilizing Amazon, utilizing AWS to innovate and build technologies that are next generation, that are going to continue to impact and change the way we live, work, and play. And it is an exciting time. And I liken a little bit of this to when IoT was, started as all the rage, and people were saying, I don't want my devices connected to one another, and I don't want them sharing information. And I'm sure many of us remember those days when we would hear that. And now IoT is an expectation. Having our devices connect to one another, sharing data, sharing information amongst them is an expectation that we have. And in fact, if it doesn't occur, we get a little bit frustrated and a little bit annoyed. And so generative AI and some of the headlines and some of the concerns that you see with the technology there's a little bit of a life cycle and an adoption curve that ends up happening with new technologies. And I really want people to continue to lean in and embrace technology in new and creative ways, because you're seeing businesses pop up. I'm sure there's startups in your own communities that are popping up because of the power of AI and generative AI and what it can do for communities, what it can do for residents, what it can do for commerce.
Well, I want to give a huge thank you, hopefully a round of applause here for our two panelists, for Stephen and Colleen. And thank you all for such a wonderful discussion. If I gave a closing thought here, I guess for me it would be beyond the technology to culture, actually, which I didn't think we would end up there. But to me, I think that's one of the core takeaways from this conversation: building that culture around innovation in your city, in your state government, in your county government, and also to the great question around San Diego and La Mesa and the innovations there, really trying to get the right policies in place to ensure that you're screening opportunities in the right way that align with where your mission, vision, your core outcome, where you're trying to go. So again, thank you all for a great conversation, and we really appreciate the time today.
But you can stay or go either way, so you're welcome to walk off, no worries. So that time again, my least favorite time of every conference, which is when we have to say goodbye to each other. It makes me so sad. But I thought I would just end where I started with a number of thank yous. One, I just want